Welcome to Grace. My name is Stephen and this is church. You know, in 2025, there's a lot of discourse about what it means to be a good leader. We make movies about it, right? Horrible bosses, with the assumption that means that there are some good bosses. We have TV segments about it. What it means to be a good leader in sports, for instance. Is Steph a good leader or is KD a good leader? I don't know if KD is ever going to shake that. And currently we have our news cycle, which goes over and over about, who is a good politician and who is probably not so good of a politician. Well, last night we had a big game on TV, and it was the Super Bowl. And one of the teams, Kansas City Chiefs, had Patrick Mahomes on it, a quarterback, and he was going for his third Super Bowl ring in a row. So there was a lot of pressure on them. But everybody expected Patrick Mahomes to, break that record. Nobody's ever won three in a row in the NFL. Well, by halftime, the game was basically over. They hadn't scored anything, and in fact, Patrick Mahomes had thrown two interceptions, and by the end of the game, he had been sacked 6 times. Sack means that the quarterback was hit down on the ground 6 times. Now, that is a lot of times. In fact, it's probably the reason he threw those interceptions because the defense kept on coming to him. 6 times. The Super Bowl record is 7 times. So 6 times we're closing in on. It's basically pretty hard to win. Well, by the third quarter, when they got the ball and they couldn't get a first down, I turned off the TV. I texted a friend and I said, hey, listen, if there's a miracle the size of crossing the Red Sea, text me, I'll get up and I will watch the rest of the game. I never got a text. The game was over. Well, this morning, I just have an interest in sports and I have an interest in leadership, so I wanted to see what Patrick Mahomes would say in the post-game conference. When they asked him, hey, what in the world happened out there? Well, what did Patrick say? And I'm going to paraphrase here, but this is basically what he said. He said, it's really hard to come back after throwing 2 interceptions. I threw those interceptions. I put us in a bad space. And because I put us in a bad space, it was overwhelming. It was almost impossible to come back. Patrick Mahomes took all the blame, all of it. And I'm sure today he's going to hear more of it. I think in some ways that this is really good leadership. I think everybody else knows. Those guys that were supposed to be protecting Patrick knew, wait a second, we might not have done our job as well as we should have. Also, I think next time there's a game, those same guys are going to say, wait a second, we can't let that happen again. We have to protect Patrick. So I think that showed good leadership. Our church building and the Sharing Place Food Bank is located right on the main street. On the main street. So there's a bus stop right outside our building. So anybody could come through our doors. And that's always an adventure. Well, in October 2023, a gentleman came into the building who introduced himself as Sabolo, aka Stanley. And since then, Stanley has said, hey, is the building open at any time that I could come in and pray? And he didn't have a job, so he came in on Tuesdays while we were doing the volunteer setup, and he'd go up inside the sanctuary and he would pray. He'd walk around the sanctuary and sing. And then he would pray some more. And finally he'd come downstairs and say, hey, how can I help? I want to be useful. God has given me hands and feet, and I can do things. How do you want to help? And so we put Stanley to work. Eventually, Stanley was able to secure himself a job, not the dream job, but he takes a bus from Toronto to Brampton to start a 3 p.m. shift, and then his shift ends at 1 a.m. and then takes a bus back from Brampton to Toronto, and then wash and repeat. He does that 5 days a week. Now that is a hard job. In fact, I thought that once he started doing that job, I didn't necessarily know if I'd see him on the weekends. I didn't know if I'd see him, when we're doing the things that we need to do to take care of the food bank or to take care of the church. But Stanley, without fail, every single week, finds time, whether to call me, to text me, and he's definitely there on Sundays. Stanley is a great leader. Well, sometimes I just can't do every single Sunday. And so I've asked Stanley, hey Stanley, would you mind speaking this Sunday? You can speak on whatever topic you want. Just by chance, Stanley has decided to talk about leadership. So let's hear what Stanley has to say about leadership and leaders, and what are we called to do as Christians.
Today I was thinking about the Great Commission about Jesus Christ on Matthew 28, where he says, "Go ye therefore and make disciples. Go to all the nations." And I had to think that Jesus basically was saying to us, we should go out there and be leaders. To be a leader, you have to understand that leadership has to go in stages. To be a leader basically is like when you stretch, you put more stress. And when you add the pressure on the stretcher, it moves from one angle, from one direction, from one length, and you increase pressure. That's exactly what leadership is all about. You move from one stage to the other, from one level, level 2, level 3, until you reach level 5, which is the level of making new leaders. A great leader makes other leaders. So Jesus was saying, we go out there and make disciples. In the process of making disciples, we need to understand that we need to grow from one stage to another. John C. Maxwell, in his book, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, states that people will only buy into a product by buying into the leader first. People buy to the leader before they buy into the product. So it makes us to understand that the process of making disciples, we should be role models. Now, David is another example where we learn that he went through different stages. He was able to kill a bear. From killing a bear, he killed a lion. From killing a lion, then he killed Goliath. It was then he became the king. So as Christians, it's a learning curve that we need to understand leadership and grow from one stage to the other. The other one who is an example of leadership is Joseph. Joseph went to the pit, and from the pit to the prison, and from the prison to the palace. These are the different stages of leadership as Christians that we need to understand so that we can grow people and become disciples. This is grace. My name is Stanley, and this is church.